Digital Dialogues podcast, we have Ron Hurle, an accomplished client executive with an extensive leadership experience spanning across various sectors, including IT operations, strategic partnerships, and real estate. His impressive career includes serving as the CIO and CISO at CalPERS, VP of Strategic Partnerships at GRIID, and Chief Operating Officer at both the Grand Canyon Association and VMC, a global technology consulting firm. Ron's journey from managing Intel's global IT infrastructure to his consulting engagements and his recent foray into real estate as a real estate agent provides a unique perspective on the evolution of IT, client-focused consulting, and how technology is impacting the real estate and the asset management world. Ron, it is a pleasure to have you on our podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is pretty exciting.
Ron, you've had a fascinating career, and I've known you for many years, and your career spanned across information technology, consulting, including business consulting, and across many more domains. Take us back a little bit to where it all began. What was childhood like? What were some of those early young adult experiences that shaped that impressive career journey you've had?
Yeah, and thank you for being gentle about how old I am and that in regards to how many years I've spent in that. Yeah, it's interesting. I never had computers on the mind. It was never part of my overall young life developing. Actually, I was a field engineer at a paper mill, and I was surveying one day. And a car drove up and said, "Jump in, Ron, we need you." And I jumped in, and we're driving back to the office, and they say, "We need you to fix the computer, it's down, and we got payroll tomorrow." And I looked at them like, well, me? On that. Somebody had told them that when I was in school, I had been at a front desk clerk working on a point of sale system. And this is back in the 1980, 81, and that. So people were very unfamiliar about what it meant to understand or know computers. So anyways, I decided to give it a shot. It was an old Northern Telecom 4-drive, 8-inch floppy disk system. And through a whole night of working with their division back in Florida, and I was in Arizona, we got it working, and I was hooked. I didn't want to go back. I really enjoyed the overall challenge of trying to get it up and running. Both, I did a little bit of coding even that night, and obviously somebody teaching me something and that. So I never looked back from there, and got lucky to get a job with ADP, and then from there develop into a number of different roles with doing outsourcing. And that's when Intel surfaced. And when Intel surfaced, that's when it really launched. It's been very good to me. I've always been excited about it, and still am. You and I have those conversations. That's where it all began. I will tell you, away from computers, one of the things that changed who I was from a leader perspective, or somebody that was involved in getting a job done, was hanging sheetrock with a guy that he was so determined on quality and speed in that order. We were paid by the piece, by the foot, and hanging sheetrock is a very physical effort. And so he had me doing a lot of the grunt work to begin with, but he wanted me to do it right. And if I did it right, then we were fast. And if we were fast, then we were able to get more money. So if you made a mistake, you had to go back and fix it. If you made a mistake and didn't go fix it, then the team that came in behind you had to fix it. So they were slowed down, and they were paid the same way. So he wrote on board every house that we did. He put the first board up, and he wrote on there, "Do it right the first time." So every time you walked in every day, depending on how long you were at that house, that sign was right there, "Do it right the first time." And I think that helped shape me in a perspective that I had in regards to how I move forward with my career. When you asked about young life lessons, that was one that came to mind.
That's fantastic. That's better than any MBA lesson that you'd learn in an MBA school today. So
Yeah.
that's fabulous. And I'm not even sure if many of our listeners would know what a floppy disk is. But I'm curious, what kind of programming language did you have back in the 80s?
So it was called TAL 2000. So when they said, or when we fixed it that night, we got the payroll run. And at that time, it was dot matrix printers, and you had the lead checks, which were, you had two, checks, and you had to lead them in. And so nobody on here is going to remember that type of thing. And I only burned one check, so I did pretty good out of 400 people and that. But anyways, they had me fly to Taft, which is just outside New Orleans, and train with their site there at the nuclear plant. They sent me to Burlingame, where I had class right outside San Francisco. And TAL 2000 was it was a basic on that, but that was the language I was learning. I actually moved into COBOL and some of the other stuff. Once again, I keep dating myself as I name these languages. But yeah, so that was where I ended up no longer coding, was with RPG3, which was the system for the AS400, which is the IBM mid-range system. And then I started moving into management and leadership. And as soon as I started management leadership, I realized how stale I was getting. And so you don't want me touching any system anymore, and that because I'll blow it up for you.
But we've gone from there to a society that's completely dependent on information technology, and we're moving into a world of AI. And obviously, with all of that, there's also the question of security, cybersecurity. Now, with your experience as the CISO at CalPERS, what were some of the biggest challenges that you've seen as somebody up there looking at security as a realm? What are some of the key challenges that come to mind that we should be looking at seriously?
It's interesting with cybersecurity, the technology staying up with that is always going to be the bigger challenge. How fast can you run compared to how fast you're being chased type of thing. We still have the normal bad actors out there. We have the ransomware still increasing. We have a number of different things happening. What I would talk to a CISO about, though, is the element of talent right now is really a difficult thing to find the right CISO talent, or security talent to come in and work with the organization. AI is going to eventually help us with that a little bit, but right now we're not there, and we need the talent. So securing the talent, getting them as part of your team. The other side is your communication capability. A lot of times in your role as either a CISO or not a security director, you have to communicate the threats to either a board or an executive staff. And that communication is going to determine your risk appetite, be able to explain the threats that are currently floating around the organization. And a lot of times you're doing this to secure funds, because you need those funds in order to address what you just explained to them. So as much as there are all these other elements out there that you have between the talent shortage and everything else, your ability to be able to really take those things, put them into an understandable, and forgive the term, but a layman's terms, so that they can determine their risk appetite, and so you can get the budgeting. That's the bigger challenge. And I saw that in CalPERS, I saw that in GRIID, I see that in a lot of different organizations. It's really difficult to make sure everybody understands where the cybersecurity threats are, and then how to fund those and take care of them.
I think those threats are truly evolving today, especially with AI, not just in the general realm where you have deep fakes and whatnot, but even network penetration and being able to exploit vulnerabilities within software. I mean, AI is getting really good at that. And in hands of bad actors, like you said, can be truly dangerous. But there was also some fascinating news that I actually read today about Google's DeepMind being able to work on the positive side and find out those vulnerabilities on ground zero or day one of a software release, which is awesome as well. So I think there are those aspects. But how do you see AI? Do you see that as becoming more of a threat, or do you see AI really helping the security realm as we move forward?
It's all the Ron optimist, which I am. And I really do believe it has a tremendous benefit to us over time. Will there be a lot of challenges with it? Yeah. Humans are humans, and we'll find a way to use it in an inappropriate manner, so to speak. But some of the things that we see in AI, based on even the IT discussion that we're having today, in regards, but if you look at it from a biotech perspective, the things of combining the laser, nano, AI capabilities and the targeting ability for helping somebody from a physical perspective, helping the humans in that. So I have a lot of hope for AI. I definitely understand the fear around it as well as the threat. The fear is that I might lose my position. I may not be able to find a job because AI is doing it for us. But the other side is And I think it's been good for you, and I'd like to coach everybody. Learn about it. Jump on and play with it, understand what AI is, and it'll definitely find its way to being enhancing your life, I believe. So once again, I'm that eternal optimist, and technology has taken care of us up to this point. I think it'll take care of us beyond this, and AI is one of those capabilities that's pretty exciting.
I agree, absolutely. I'm glad to see that you don't see the Skynet scenario yet, but I'm with you. I'm an optimist as well. I'm looking forward to the wonderful world this new technology is going to usher in. That being said, Ron, I also want to understand you've been a consultant, you've helped both the technology world and the business world from a consulting capacity. Are you helping businesses today navigate this new world? And if so, I'd love to understand what are some of the things from a consulting capacity you're providing to your clients in this evolving world of AI? What are things you're telling them to look
Yeah,
at?
so AI is pretty much a leading conversation a lot of times, depending on what they're trying to apply. Who I'm currently working with, one is from an infrastructure perspective, so they're just trying to make sure they have the capabilities to handle the demand that AI drives. And when you think about what we did when I worked at GRIID for Bitcoin mining, the energy demand, the capabilities of having that density within a container, and now translating that to how that might work in an AI environment. And some of that is the conversations that we're having. Other parts of the conversation really go on how do we use AI to be more effective for maybe testing or QA. Anomaly testing is or detection is what we're calling it. And so some of those things are also being incorporated in making us more effective and faster in being able to understand things. I'll make a not a divergent, but one of the things when I made the comment about the biotech, and it's what you're seeing with AI, is we have the opportunity now in the digital twin world. And for those out there, that's the digitizing something that you're trying to emulate a certain scenario. And they're able to do the digital twin human-wise. So now when you're testing vaccines, the testing mechanism can be that much more effective and quicker rather than something that's going to take 7 to 8 to 10 years can be condensed into a much shorter timeline. So that's another example of where that AI advantage comes into play. That didn't mean to diverge from what I'm doing with my consultants, but that is that conversation around how AI has a powerful impact. The other thing
Oh,
I
that's a
do in my
great example.
consulting,
That was a great example.
yeah. And another thing about that I do in consulting, and I think you're aware of this, is I do a lot of leadership consulting. And that is really about helping executives either come together as a team or help them on an individual basis with developing their career. Some of my recent ones was with a large organization, Fortune 100, and they had an executive team that was brought together that was struggling hitting their goals. They were not feeling like they understood each other, whatever the case may be, and they asked me to come in, and I did a boot camp for 3 days. But what I wanted to share with that one was a moment there that was completely ad lib. I can't take too much credit in the fact that I had a thought dawn on me. The room that we were in, one wall was all a whiteboard. The whole wall was a whiteboard. And I was listening to these guys argue and talk about different things they were trying to get done because we were trying to set up a strategy system or scenario. So I stopped them and I asked one of the individuals, I said, would you go up and stand against the wall with your back against the wall? And so he'd sit up there, and there was 10 or 12 individuals. I went around and gave everybody else a marker, and I said, go over to him and write next to him what you think he does. And so here's these 10 or 12 people. He's standing there up against the wall, and they're writing. And so eventually they had his form with all these things. So when they were done, I asked him to step away, turn around, and tell me what he sees. And he was looking at what everybody had wrote, and multiple times he goes, I don't do that. I've never done that. Who thinks I do? And then everybody in the room, startled going, who does that then? And then they look at each other, and then a couple times nobody was doing it or thought they had the responsibility. But what that exercise represented once again is that we really don't take the time in an executive realm to truly understand what each person is trying to provide to the organization and how that intertwines with each other. If we don't step back and say, okay, wait a minute, where are we doing? What do you do? What do I do? Here's that combination. when you ask about some of the things that I do, those things I really thoroughly enjoy doing is working with the leadership teams and the executive groups to help them come together as a team. Because a lot of executives lose the team mentality when they first move into their executive group. It's really crucial they don't do that, that they stay that team focus. Anyways, but those are the kind of work I've been doing. So.
That's great, Ron. And in the years I've known you, I've always heard from people who have worked with you about your ability to bring in teams together across different geographical boundaries, also different disparate teams. And that's something that I was going to ask you next. In fact, as a VP of Strategic Partnership at GRIID, and even as a C-level executive at various organizations, at the end of the day, it's about managing people, getting them to rally against, go against challenges, or rally towards one common goal. And what has been some of the amazing things that you've deployed that's worked so well for you that you'd like to share with our audience here today?
When you say, what do I do, or what do you
Bringing
mean?
teams together, just getting them to focus on one goal, and just the magic that you've done in your administration and management career over the
Well,
years.
I think one of the important things, and I wish I could say that I was really good at it for a long time. I have life lessons that were painful of where I made some big mistakes, but I think I did embrace the learning mechanism to improve as I got more mature in my role. The biggest thing for me, so diversity is always very important, but when I look at diversity, it's not just on the normal diversities. I'm also looking at that personality diversity because I want an antagonist on my team, somebody that really annoys everybody all the time, and they're all looking at me like, how come that person's always in that type? And part of that annoying is they make you go to places in your closet you wouldn't necessarily go, and they're important to you. And then you want the optimist. You want the ones that are maybe a little bit too rose-colored glasses. They're drawing you into these areas. So you have a diversity, or a rainbow as I call it, within your group, and that really gives you the opportunity to get to the right kind of solutions. The art form is putting that all together, is making sure that everybody has a voice, everybody has a value with their voice. There are moments when you have to be tough with the kids, so to speak, and I don't mean to demean any of them, but sometimes you have to be tough on them. Other times you're letting them just go at it for a while, and then from that you bring out what hopefully is going to be the better idea by bringing them all together. It's extremely energizing, can be exhausting, but it's very energizing to have that kind of opportunity with your different teams. And I would do it still, I can't do it anymore. And I enjoy doing the consulting aspect because it gives me an opportunity to hopefully help another leader become more effective than what they were the day before.
That is truly fascinating. And the other thing that's fascinated me about you, Ron, is how seamlessly you take on different roles. You've been a technologist, a CIO, a CISO, and then you take on business leadership and consulting roles. But recently, I also noticed that you forayed into real estate. Tell us a little bit about that. What got you into real estate, and tell us about your adventures in the real estate world.
Well, I think I've had a couple of life crises in my 7 decades I've been here on Earth. And one was when I left Intel and that it was time to go and that type of thing. And then I moved into the consulting and that. And then I had a senior life crisis just in the last few years to where I have a wellness certificate for health, both for physical and nutrition. I'm actually taking a functional nutrition course right now. And then I went and got my real estate license. And the real estate license at one point in time was because of referrals, the opportunity to refer people that wanted to come to Arizona, because Arizona is an active destination. There's a lot of people I knew internationally and that type of thing. So that was what the mindset was when I was doing that. Some life events happened. I had a bad car accident and some other things happened, and then I got back into the consulting, and so I haven't really touched the real estate as the same. I'm still part of Coldwell Banker, still have my license. But what I see from an automated perspective is really cool. We already know about the drone activities and the opportunity to visually see things, whether it be the real estate itself, and they're using some drone technology for doing inspections on that, depending on how easy it is or not easy to get to a certain location. We have the virtual tours for people that are buying a home, and now you have augmented reality to where You can do the virtual tour, and then you can put your own furniture in there through augmented reality and see how your furniture would fit into. So you have all this technology that's starting to take place that gives you a whole different level of, if you want to call it effectiveness as a realtor, because that person could be in Boston and you can be in Arizona, and you can literally, with a very good drone technology, be able to take them through the house and stop and look at things. It's not just the virtual tour that you would normally take. Then you have things like Zillow and other things that are going on that are being much more effective. So even technology in real estate is exciting. So I think it's going to have a huge impact on what we're going to do in the future is from both buying and selling homes. So it was, like I said, I think it was a senior life crisis is why I did it. So.
No, and I'm glad you did because it's very relevant to quantum strides just because that's exactly the area we're in. We develop and implement software that focuses on real estate technology. And when someone with deep background like tech gets into the real estate world, obviously you catch my attention. My follow-on question, Ron, is going to be about, given that you've really had a phenomenal career in both technology and the business world, what are some of the, especially for young leaders today who are trying to make a career in a very uncertain world in a sense, with newer technology like artificial intelligence really taking over, what would you tell young leaders today? What should they be looking out at? When you look back, what were some of the things that you did right that you think the younger generation should learn from?
Yeah, I still think the educational aspect that I was talking about earlier, the ability to really consume information that is relevant to your interest and to maybe a passion that you have, especially in technology. There's so many different avenues you can go, and whether it be security or different technology, whatever it might be, you have that need to get out there, then you need to take the time to really consume information about it. And it's not necessarily formal. A lot of it is now your ability to go out and just spend time with the right groups, spend time with the right companies that are out there. So I do think that's one. I also think that if you're in that mode, and I think I'm still there, but once again, I've aged over the time, but it's to stay fearless, and that there is nothing that you can't understand and work with if you keep that fearless kind of perspective, and especially if you want to be a leader. Most people will follow those that feel that even though there may be some challenges, there may be some things that are a little scary, but to be with somebody that's fearless, it doesn't mean that they aren't worried periodically. It doesn't mean that they're not a little scared here and there, but they're fearless through that in order to be successful. So as a leader, keep that kind of element about you. It really is powerful for the people that are trying to follow you.
That's wonderful advice. Stay fearless. If I take away anything from this podcast, that would be it. But
Yeah.
I also want to follow up with this one fact. The amount of time I've known you've been also involved in a lot of community service, especially with the tribes. And if you want to talk to us a little bit about that, some of the cool projects you've done around that, and how has that impacted the community at large?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could tell you what the impact was. Some of that, else would have to tell you on that. Where I had a very humbling opportunity in working with multiple tribes that call the Grand Canyon their home was when I lived on the Grand Canyon on the South Rim for a little over a year. I worked with the Park Service, and I was part of one of the tribal summits, if you want to put it that way, when they were discussing a lot of things to do around an area in that's called the confluence, which is where a lot of the tribes believe that's the birthing of who they are today as a tribe, and protecting that and making sure that it was handled properly. And it was incredibly interesting listening to the stories they had about their tribes and why they felt certain ways, and very humbling in their aspect of how they truly embrace the earth that we live on, and how they are making sure or trying to make sure that it's protected and it's honored. And then from there, I got an opportunity to work with the college. And working with the college, there was a lot of community involvement that we had in Flagstaff, which is the city that I live in right now. And that was very impactful for me, working with some of the busing systems for moving people around. But when we were working we were also trying to assist with the fiber optic applications so that the tribal areas, or the reservations, the tribal areas, could start to get some sort of technology available to them. Things have improved. I'm on Starlink right now, so with Starlink starting to come about, there are some different ways to improve the capabilities of that. But for the longest time, their ability to get any kind of communication on even email, they would have to drive to a tribal center because a lot of times they didn't have electricity, they didn't even have the capability to do something from where they lived. So we were a part of that, and that was always extremely interesting. And we've been successful with the fiber optics here in Arizona to start expanding that loop to be more effective and start tying people in. But I will say that you made the comment about young leaders, and that keep that in the back of their mind, that they're always paying attention to how they can contribute from a community perspective. You are going to learn a lot, and a lot of that has very good value for people that may need something in your community. So keep that in mind.
That is fascinating. Thank you, Ron. I think we're almost at the end of our podcast, but I did want to say this was fascinating. There's so much knowledge that even in this short time that you've shared that I took away personally. I'm sure our audience will as well. But is there anything else that you would like to add, or anything else that I might have missed asking that you want to share with the audience?
I truly appreciate you even taking an interest to want to hear from the old goat here, and that I do feel that we're going to have a long time as professional friends that we have been, and I've really been impressed with what you've done with the organization and where it's going now. And I think that as long as you and I are going to stay those friends, then I'm going to continue to grow as well. But hopefully, if people have questions to you, that if you need me to answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to. But I think that I probably said my piece for the day.
Thank you. And so my last question there would be, if people need to get in touch with you, Ron, what's the best way for them to reach you?
So it's always going to be good through LinkedIn. If you have a LinkedIn account, I'm right there on that. So if you message me there, and then I have contact information on my profile there, and that's probably the best way to reach me.
Excellent. And we'll put that in our comments. If
Yeah, you can put the profile contact there. That'd be great. So.
Wonderful. Again, this has been wonderful, Ron. Thank you so much for your time. Listeners, hope you enjoyed this conversation. Stay tuned and stay fearless.
All right, you too.